Good morning, good evening, everyone calling in from the United States and Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. Welcome to our launch event for the summer report of the 10th Mekong-U.S. Partnership Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue on Food and Agricultural Trade and Investment. My name is Brian Eiler, and I will be chairing and moderating this session. In a bit, my colleague Hai Pham from the U.S. ASEAN Business Council will be joining us as well. And he and I co-chaired this 10th policy dialogue in Jakarta. Some of you might think it's interesting that a Mekong-focused policy dialogue was housed in Jakarta. We did this in June with the very purpose of bringing in experts and officials from the ASEAN Secretariat. And indeed, we were able to have many from the ASEAN Secretariat attend this meeting and contribute their thoughts and insights, as well as their plans, as well as through our partnership with the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, we were able to attract many company representatives and experts from maritime Southeast Asia to make this kind of a all of ASEAN conference that looked at Mekong issues. And as many of you know, needs for improvement in supply chains and crop resilience and other challenges face the region of the Mekong. And some of those challenges are not unique to the Mekong. They're shared within the rest of ASEAN and the rest of the world too. So the conference, which was held over a 2-day period in Jakarta, focused on a few different themes. We looked at both industrial scale agriculture and food production, as well as needs for small and medium enterprises entering and surviving and thriving in today's market. We examined trade barriers. Trade is obviously a big issue for the United States right now. We not only looked at ways to improve trade between the Mekong and the United States, but within the Mekong region itself. And then we took a deeper dive into some specific sectoral issues, looking at seed needs. And this is one of the reasons why we've invited Dr. May, Kanakwan May with us this evening, as well as livestock health and other opportunities for technological improvements. One of our panelists who cannot join us today, originally we had advertised, Katerina Levy, came and talked about AI for meteorological monitoring and the promises, as well as the pitfalls of such technology. Unfortunately, she can't join us today. This event culminated in a synthesis exercise where the participants in the activity all got together and came up with solution statements to some pressing challenges in the region. And we do this through a participatory and inclusive exercise that then comes together to form the summary report that we are launching today. And I will drop that report in the chat link, the chat room very soon. But at the same time, I have to say that this is the final launch of summary report for this project, the Mekong-U.S. Partnership Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue, where over the course of 11 experiences, we brought stakeholders together from around the region to develop policy recommendations and solution statements for some of the region's most pressing challenges. And it's been an honor to run this project, to manage this project, and to see those recommendations being put to use by the U.S. government, various agencies, including the State Department. And one other final point before we get into things here is I said that I managed the project, but really the heart and soul and the energy behind the Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue project is my colleague and Deputy Director, Courtney Weatherby, who was really a one-person show in getting these agendas together, issuing invites to hundreds of people to attend these conferences over the last 5 years, and making sure that everything works well. She did it so well that really all I had to do was show up and wear a suit and talk like this. But again, thank you, Courtney. My hat's off to you and to everybody else who participated in this. So let's get right to our run of show today. First, we're going to hear from David J. Gaynor, who's the Director of the Office of Southeast Asia at the U.S. Department of State. David is the Director of the Office of Southeast Asia. He's a career member of the Senior Foreign Service with the rank of Minister Counselor. David has also served as the Office Director for Southern Africa Affairs and Deputy Director of the Office of Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific Island Affairs. He earned a master's degree in American history, African history, and liberal studies from the University of Maryland, University of Cape Town, and Georgetown University. And he holds a BA from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. He also taught secondary school as a Peace Corps volunteer in Malawi. David, over to you. We look forward to your opening remarks.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me okay, Brian?
Can hear you very well.
Fantastic. Good morning, good evening to those in Washington, D.C. and around the world. As Brian said, my name is David Gaynor. I'm the Office Director for the Office of Southeast Asia Affairs here in the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs of the Department of State. I'm really delighted to be with you this morning. This topic is near and dear to my heart. My grandfather was a seed farmer in the Midwest. My uncle took over the family farm and was a seed farmer. And my cousin and his children still run the seed farm in the Midwest. So I'm really excited to be part of this discussion today. First, I'd like to start to thank all of you for attending this summary report launch event on the 10th Mekong-U.S. Partnership Policy Dialogue on Food and Agricultural Trade and Investment. I also want to, of course, thank our partners at the Stimson Center for organizing this dialogue in coordination with U.S. ASEAN Business Council. Stimson Center has been such an important partner supporting Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue Series since inception way back in 2021. This partnership, I believe, has contributed significantly to generating policy recommendations to address critical challenges in Southeast Asia. This Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue brought together over 50 subject matter experts and civil society members. The majority of today's attendees come from the Mekong countries, with others attending from the U.S., other ASEAN countries, and around the world to exchange views on the needs and gaps related to food and agricultural trade and investment. Throughout this dialogue, participants discussed the importance of robust food and agricultural trade flows, sustainable seed innovation systems, and secure supply chains for economic development and food security. For those of you unfamiliar with the Mekong-U.S. Partnership, or MUSP, it is the premier platform for the United States and Mekong countries to address transboundary challenges and find solutions to some of the most pressing policy challenges we face together. Some of these challenges include transboundary water governance and management, food and water insecurity, transnational crime, including online scam operations and human trafficking, and barriers to trade and investment. Recognizing these transboundary and shared challenges across the Mekong subregion, the MUSP focuses on 4 priority areas: economic connectivity, water and natural resources management, human resources development, and non-traditional security. The U.S. Department of State implemented this series of Track 1.5 policy dialogues in partnership with the Stimson Center as a key program for human resource development under the MUSP. We are bringing together government, civil society, the private sector, and other stakeholders to develop solutions to transnational challenges facing the Mekong subregion across all 4 priority areas. Prior dialogues covered topics such as transboundary water governance, connectivity, infrastructure, human resource capacity building, food security, and online scam operations. This dialogue on food and agricultural trade and investment was the 10th and penultimate dialogue in the MUSP Track 1.5 dialogue series. Food security is an important focus of our efforts under the non-traditional security pillar of MUSP. Our work with the United States Department of Agriculture through the Seed Trade Capacity Building Program exemplifies this work. Why are seeds such an important part of our food security diplomacy? Because seed piracy, theft of intellectual property rights, and illicit transfer of seed-related agricultural technology is harmful to new investment and innovation in new plant varieties. By combating these illicit activities, we are strengthening regional and global food security. Working closely with the American Seed Trade Association and the Asia and Pacific Seed Association, the Seed Trade Capacity Building Program builds institutional capacity for research, innovation, and new seed technologies, promotes and enables better policy environments for seed and trade investment, and facilitates cooperation and partnerships with the private sector in the Mekong subregion. As we look ahead, I would like to once again thank our partners at the Simpson Center for the implementation of the Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue Series and the summary reports over the past several years. This collaboration has contributed significantly to advancing U.S. engagement with policy development on critical topics in Southeast Asia and the Mekong subregion. This report's policy recommendations provide actionable steps to improve food security and agricultural trade in the Mekong subregion. I look forward to hearing the experts on today's panel discuss these recommendations. Thank you once again, and I look forward to continuing our important work to advance food and trade, agricultural trade in the Mekong subregion. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, David. And David has kindly agreed to stick around through the rest of the hour. If he has to go away to a meeting, we understand that. But David, we welcome you to provide any comments and answers to questions during our Q&A session.
Delighted to. Thank you, Brian.
And for those of you tuning in, if you do have questions for any of the speakers today, please pose them in the Q&A box. Do not write them in the chat. Post them in the Q&A box and kindly write them to a particular speaker, or you can say this is a question for all speakers. And I will field them and then ask them to our participants. So feel free to start that anytime as you are moved to do so. Now moving on to our panelists, and again, with regret, one of our panelists, Katerina Levy, couldn't join us, so we're going to lean on Dr. May and Swandi for some extra color this morning, and as well as hear from Hai Pham from the U.S. ASEAN Business Council to share some of their impressions of the dialogue, but also to speak to their expertise on issues as they're emerging in the region. So to introduce our speakers, we have Dr. Kanakwan May Cho Choi. She is the group head for public and regulatory affairs at East West Seeds. This is the second dialogue that she joined for us. May holds a PhD in biotechnology from Mahidol University in Bangkok. She began her career at Monsanto to guide and lead quality, then became the executive director of the Asia and Pacific Seed Alliance, APSA, which David Gaynor mentioned. The Regional Seed Association, where she built a strong network with multi-sector stakeholders in the seed supply chain. She's a real expert on seed policy. She's an advocate and is consistently building capacity on a variety of issues, including plant variety protection and the international seed movement. After we hear from May, we're going to hear from Swandi Dharmawan Tanuwijanto, who is the Agricultural Policy Program Manager for Asia Pacific at Corteva Agriscience. And Swandi spoke on several panels and was a productive conversant in many of the panels that we hosted over the 2 days in Jakarta. Swandi joined Corteva as the Sustainable Development Manager for the APAC region. As part of the Regional Government and Industry Affairs team, his current roles include improving strategy and analysis of policy, program, and partnership, and leading government and stakeholder advocacy and engagement. He supports technical guidance on agricultural policy and sustainability topics. Mostly his work focuses on shaping science-based policy agendas and advancing technology acceptance, licensing to operate, and policy alignment. So we're going to hear from Dr. May and Swandi first, and then we'll get to our Q&A. Dr. May, over to you.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share the summary of the seed innovation session. So I just would like to share everything in one presentation about the seed innovation about everything. So first, this is the why we want to focus on seed, because seed is the starting point of the food security. And here you can see that based on the report from FAO, they mentioned only 64 crops, but in this, other than 64 crops would include, of course, vegetables and other type of the crops that are not included here. But so it means that purely, food is produced from seeds. And when we talk about food security, now we would like to put it equally to seed security, because without a seed supply availability, it's very hard for us to talk about food security. And if you look into the bottom line of the chart, you will see the link, the arrow in and out, and that's definitely refers to the trade. And so you can imagine that if we are in the situation with the trade disruption, that definitely impact lots of things in this circle. And so when we talk about seeds, so there are, of course, the system that we call a farmer's seed system and also the farmer seed system. Here, I'm going to focus more on the farmer seed system, because farmer system more, there's a different scheme that we will not talk in this panel. So in the farmer seed system, of course, here, this is why we would like to focus first in the technology in the plant breeding, because if we look into the way we consume our, the products, vegetables or rice or maize or, everything that we put on our plate, you can see the evolution. And that evolution comes from the technique that the breeders use in the plant breeding process. If you look into the line, the genetic variation and the trait uniformity, the more the process it takes from time to time, generation to generation, with a creativity of the breeders that know precisely what they are going to add genetically in the new developed variety. Say, for example, disease resistant or abiotic resistant, just because they would like to relieve the pains of the farmers when the farmers get the seeds and put on the ground, so that the seeds can be very strong at the beginning. And so somehow it can also reduce input that would help to yield, reserve and maintain the quality of the seed, and also produce a good yield, which would return to a good income for farmers. So this is the process that we work. This is period all the steps from most of we call integrated seed company. So when we talk about integrated seed company, we mean company that do the research, seed production, and also commercialization. So only the part of the research itself, it can take 10 to 15 years, and that's not guarantee that every variety that have been developed by breeders would go to the hands of farmers, right? And so this takes also times also to do the evaluation and selection together with the commercial to really make sure that it would answer the pains or help to relieve the pains of the farmers when it's going to the field. And so along the line, if you can see, so after it's got a good line, a good purity, then it's go to the seed production. And this part take very good quality management process to ensure that all the seeds carry still the same characteristics that the breeders provided to the seed production team. And then after that would pack and go. And this process in this does not happen in one place or one country. It can be from 3 countries. Research and development can be done in one country, do the seed production in another country, and also get to ship to another country for seed processing, and also to the end customer in another country. So if I put this layer, you will start to see the complication when we need to move the seed, right? And so here, this is the international regulatory framework to sustain the seed system or to make sure on the seed availability. Here, I would like to highlight of course, all the parts contribute important regulatory frameworks for the seed sector to survive. First, if you talk about the seed quality, of course, we need to refer to the testing methodology from ISTA or OECD seed scheme. But here, I would like to emphasize on the role of UPOF, because I talked already about breeders, right? And in order for breeders to keep maintaining a good program for farmers, they need a good protection. And I heard in the keynote also in the highlight, the opening remarks of David already mentioned about seed piracy. And this is actually indeed not good for the farmers and also for the breeders to maintain their work developing the new varieties for farmers. So actually the UPOF is the important framework or scheme that we wish that the countries, at least in the Mekong-U.S. partnership, would comply and follow. We know that Vietnam already is a member of UPOF, but we still hope that the rest of the countries would amend their plant variety protection law to ensure on the robust system to protect the rights of the breeders. And that's how the same way would generate the benefit for the farmers. And the last part, this is very important also on the market access. This one would help a lot starting from the germplasm movement, support the research development, and also ensuring that the high quality seeds would reach to farmers mostly. So if we talk about opportunities to align and to work together between public and private sector, here we see that ISPM 38, which I also see that is mentioned in the summary, which is good. So this is the international phytosanitary standard that make for international seed movements, means when the country put the import requirement, they should really emphasize on the pest risk analysis specifically for seeds, and don't put any other diseases that seeds is not the pathway. And another important ISPM is number 45. This one would help the country to work more efficient to support the industry they need to leverage the role from the executor and to accreditor or auditor in the way. So it means that it can authorize the private sector or any entities that meet the qualification to run the phytosanitary activities, to run the lab testing and also field inspection, comply with the import regulation. But the phytosanitary certificate is still issued by the government. So this process would definitely help to boost the capacity of the NPPO in the country when we talk about the seed trade. Next, I already highlighted that we need a strong, robust system of the plant variety protection so that we have a great protection for the breeders to work and to protect their rights at least in the certain period of the time. So we talk about 20 years at least for vegetable and the row crops. And plant breeding innovation, this one is a technique that would help breeders to work better. So now we have the genome editing tool, and now it's becoming very important too because it can shorten the lead time for variety improvement until adaptation by farmers. So the lead time can reduce at least 5 years. Usually it would take 10 to 15 years. It can be reduced to around 5 years. So this now becoming a really good policy, and for example, Thailand already start to unlock this, and we would like to see also other countries adopting similar approach. And at the end, I believe that a strong public-private partnership exchanging between the National Seed Association and also the government, especially the Department of Agriculture, even from the same country or different countries, would definitely required to build the trust, and that would come into the regulatory reforms, and that overall would help to maintain or encourage the innovation in seeds to farmers. And that's all my presentation. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much, Meng. And thank you for noting that some of these innovations are discussed in our summer report. And I've just dropped the link in the chat. So those of you who are joining in, please take some time to look through that if you're interested. But I hope you're much more interested in hearing what Swandi has to say. And again, Swandi, thank you for joining us. I believe you're calling in from Jakarta. Is that right?
Correct, exactly.
Okay, well, Swandi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity for all of us joining the discussion during the 1.5 policy dialogue. It has been a fruitful and engaging discussions. In part, we was successful in collating all of the minds and inputs from different compartments, different sectors on the key important topics and issues in the trade and investment in agriculture, food and agriculture sector. And I'd like to highlight the points David made in the opening about the importance of trade and investment It simply signifies the roles of the private players in providing product and services, and at the same time, government and including multilateral organizations in creating a conducive, enabling environment. And most of it going to be through regulation. And those are pretty much what we sum or concluded in the discussions on the trade and food related policy recommendation. So I can pick up about three key themes and recommendations around this topic. For the first part is on the standard and how the standard and regulations are streamlined to ensure a more effective and a fruitful the market. So if we know that to improve food safety and to facilitate trade, the stakeholders need to adapt internationally to the best practices and ensure that the supply chain follow through the same standard. But then it's going to be challenging, and current standards are fragmented and complex. For example, the certification process. So some of the recommendation in the discussions would include the implementation of the Codex Alimentarius standard, for example, for food safety. And Dr. May also mentioned it previously about the protection of plant varieties. And those kind of standards are important to ensure that not only the farmers can secure quality inputs for them to grow, but also the consumers on the other end will gain a better quality of product. The second part of the recommendations falls under the category around how the regulation should be able to reduce the bureaucratic red tapes. And we know that the whole procedures and including the non-tariff measures would increase the food cost and also limit access not only to farmers as the one who grow the food, but also to consumers. So then the regulators need to ensure that the process undergoing the whole streamlined process and also can accelerate the technology approvals while at the same time keeping the safety standard in place. So some of the recommendation around this topic include the trade association and think tanks that should also involve in highlighting the insufficiencies, for example, due to the non-tariff barrier, and also the stakeholders push for governments to ensure a timely new agricultural technology approvals so that the farmers can secure the solutions at the right time, and then at the same time it can answer the needs, demands of the consumer as well. And the harmonization of the standard is another key element here, because we will deal at the national level, the local authorities, and also the ASEAN region, for example. And the last piece is on how the stakeholders as well and the regulators need to ensure a more science-based regulation and how that regulation can support the local industry to grow and flourish. So for example, some of the recommendations talk about the adaptation of the international standard, like the Codex, the regulation that can encourage more foreign direct investment and venture capital to support the small, medium enterprises, and also how the development bank be able to essentially provide funding to support some of the key enabling environment, including infrastructure, for example. And lastly, Brian, I think this is also important highlight that in the discussions during the whole sessions, some of the key topics also include the importance of inclusion of the SMEs, the small medium enterprises. And it is very important because in ASEAN region or in Mekong, if we want to put it a little bit narrowed down, the involvement of small medium enterprises are pretty much lacking, whereby they become part of the society and the farming community. So the regulatory trade barrier should be able to address the complexity that the SMEs are facing. So then the recommendation should also benefit them, and then at the same time improving their involvement in the value chain and the traceability process. Another key issues that also related with the SMEs is the problem with the shrinking agricultural workforce. You would see a lot in many developing countries, and how this generational gap also inhibits the adoptions of new technology. So then if we want to ensure that the SME is going to be part of the supply chains and they can be part of the regional trade scheme, then we also need to include the younger generations of player to be in the system. And lastly, on the technology and innovation, digital literacy and IP restrictive systems should be part of the discussion, because then the modernizations and the involvement of not only SMEs, but also the big players and also the governments can be part of the improvement in the trade and investment policy scheme. I think those are pretty much my summary from the topics that we discuss on the trade policy. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Swandi. I've got a few questions for you and Dr. May. But before we get there, I'm going to invite my colleague and fellow co-chair of our policy dialogue, Mr. Hai Pham, to provide some remarks on how the U.S. ASEAN Business Council is engaging with food and agricultural investments and trade within Southeast Asia. And a quick introduction to Hai. He joined the U.S. ASEAN Business Council in 2014 and is currently Senior Research Director for Policy and Strategic Initiatives. He also oversees key industry portfolios, including, very importantly, food and agriculture, but also health and life sciences, energy, and APEC. And he's based here in Washington. It's great to have him here in town with us. And I think we'll be seeing each other this week as there are many meetings related to food and agricultural trade happening around Washington. Hai, over to you.
Thanks so much, Brian, and good morning to everyone here in the U.S. Good evening to those in the region. From the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, and on behalf of our members as well, we're really grateful for this opportunity to partner on this important dialogue. I think just from my end, to zoom out a little bit, I'd just love to share a little bit more about the U.S. ASEAN Business Council and our work, especially in the food and agriculture sector. So USABC, we support U.S. businesses operating in Southeast Asia. We operate in many different sectors, and as Brian mentioned, I support our food and agriculture portfolio here based in Washington, D.C. The work of our Food and Agriculture Committee is chaired by our one of our member companies, Cargill, and vice-chaired Corteva with Swandi here today. But other companies in this food and ag space is coming from different subsectors of the sector, the ag, trade, and commodities. I mentioned Cargill and ADM. From the animal health side, MSD Animal Health, as well as Elanco Animal Health, biotechnology and sustainable agriculture, Corteva, as I mentioned. And then a lot of companies in the food and beverage space, including Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Mondelez and Mars, Tyson Foods, Starbucks as well. So to be able to have all those different voices be in Southeast Asia and to promote their work, it's a very important work that we've done at USABC. This week, we're actually, a big delegation of ours is in Manila to participate in the 47th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting on Agriculture and Forestry. And a lot of the work that we're doing there does focus on sustainable agriculture, promoting overall to improve the food systems and food security trade, as well as bringing the digital innovation side to ASEAN as well. The overall objectives of our Ag Committee is to support the ASEAN policymaking in, as I mentioned, sustainable agriculture practices, plant science, as well as animal health, nutrition, agritech, and I mentioned food and beverage. We're also working hard, and this kind of is aligned and comes out in the policy recommendations from the dialogue too, but promoting overall ASEAN-aligned practices, capacity building across all ASEAN member states through implementation and support of some of the recommendations. Trade facilitation is important to us, and we coordinate with the ASEAN stakeholders to address both tariff as well as non-tariff barriers to improving food and agriculture trade and investment. I know that both of the speakers mentioned this previously, but the non-tariff barriers to trade is an important aspect that we looked at in depth at the policy dialogue. And then overall on the technology side, advancing technology, smart agriculture through data-driven solutions, innovation hubs. And I think one panel that took place at the policy dialogue touched a lot on technology. A few of our members there, Illumina, Atmo, were able to share some of their work in genomics as well as in AI for weather prediction. So within the subsectors of the US ABC food and agricultural work, I mentioned sustainable inputs and climate smart agriculture, digital innovation and agri-tech access, resilient and integrated supply chains, as well as animal health. All of our work as a member-driven organization and supporting the work of our members, all of our work and recommendations and engagements with ASEAN touch on some of those pillars. So I think I'll pause there, but I just wanted to just jump in very briefly, give a big overview of USABC, our work, how it's divided, and then I'm happy to join our panelists today to answer any questions that you will have. Please feel free to ask them in the Q&A box. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Hai. And we're going to come back to you for sure for some closing remarks as well. Well, now is the time for all of you tuning in to drop some questions in the Q&A box. Please feel free to type your questions directly in that Q&A box. And if you can, pose those questions to a particular speaker, or you can say this is for anyone. I do have some questions first to kick off our discussion. And this is kind of targeted towards Swandi, but anyone can answer. Trade regimes are in flux. This is undeniable. And it's an important priority for the US to make American companies more prosperous and make Americans more prosperous. But I'm curious as to how the region is adjusting, not just to changes in US trade policy, but also to other trade policies around the world. Swandi, are you seeing ASEAN develop more kind of inter-ASEAN trade agreements as a result of the changing climate, or is it causing kind of a standstill as countries in the region try to figure out the new future, the new normal?
Thank you, Brian. And I think this important questions is something that we have been witnessing slowly and also evolving at the same times. If we look at from the context of how the ASEAN region and each of the country adjusting to the recent trade disruption and also trade deals, each of the countries are now looking into two different points, more on the inward-looking points on how they would need to reduce reliance on the international trade, and that can include the programs from the national governments on food sufficiency, self-sufficiency, anything related to increasing the productions, maximizing and increasing the efficiency of local domestic transportations of goods and trades and services within the countries. So that's one part. The other part is also how each of the countries are now increasing in terms of connections. I have been observing several ASEAN countries that during the trade deal period, the Ministry of Agriculture are connecting each other. So either through the bilateral visits and meetings, or also including other countries from the European nations. And if you look at from the standard, the adjustment of harmonization of the standard. So some of it are now, it's still ongoing and then still evolving as well. Part of it to help a smoother trade, not only with the US, but also the global partner. I can give you one example, like the gene editing technology. So now many ASEAN countries are looking into that particular technology, not only to allow themselves to be ready when the time comes for the gene edited products are available, but also how can they maximize and leverage the technology for their own use to increase the not only the productions, but also to ensure that when the bad time comes, the region are ready in providing the supports, the food support particularly. And last piece is also around how the multinational, multilateral kind of organization like ASEAN secretariats are also now looking into a kind of a long-term visions on how the connectivity within the regions are improving, and also food and agriculture trades are also increasing. So we would see lots of developments around the guidelines to support the ASEAN member states to improve themselves on the regulatory aspect, on the trade aspect, and also on the capacity building aspects. So in the recent years, there has been many new guidelines around sustainable investments, on SME developments, on digital. So all of the new aspects are now taken into the account, and we would expect that most of the ASEAN member states are now preparing themselves in adopting those guidelines. And what makes me happy is that the opportunity on involvement from the private sector are still there, and even more so. And we are still waiting how the discussions that is happening within this week, the AMAF, the one that Hai mentioned, what are the key decision that has been discussed in that session in the meetings, and how the ASEAN member state can work together to improve the sector, and also more importantly, how the private sectors can play roles in supporting the goal. I hope that answers your question, Brian.
Thank you, Swati. That was very comprehensive. Does anyone else want to chime in on that? Well, again, thank you, Swati, for that very comprehensive answer. We're getting some questions. I'm going to read through these as we ask the next one. May, a question for you. How do you see the seed industry changing over the next 10 years? What are some of the challenges that the industry globally has to embrace, but also those that are specific to the region?
In this region, in the past 10 years, I see also a good change and also a regretting change. A great change is in the recent, I would say that after COVID, there are also, emerging of the new policy that promoting more innovation. So that's how, if you see the trend, like what Swati mentioned about genome editing technology, start emerging right after that. And another regretting thing, though I see what Swati mentioned is about the self-sufficient. We also see the same trend in seed industry. That somehow the government in some countries put also a mandate or mandatory that the seed has to be produced locally. That's how somehow they need to be mindful on the situation that not all the crops can be produced in one location in one country. So that's why this part should be more kind of put more innovative solution in a way, rather than restrict the solution that everything has to be produced locally. While of course you can promote the crops or the technology that can be used by the younger generations, so that can increase more self-sufficiency. And another thing that I see is the way we see also the trend of the seed piracy coming also. I believe that because of the emerging in the trend of the new varieties have been promoted widely, while also some companies that would like to do the shortcut way, they do not want to invest. So that's how we see that things emerging in at the same time also in the past 10 years, and with mostly in the area of the row crops, if I would say, because that's still important for the farmers. And then we see that trend emerge, and at the same time, the regulations cannot be innovative enough to catch those. If I would like to point out only for the plant variety protection, the case of, say, for example, in Thailand, it took very long, like so many years until we are able to encourage the government that this is very important. And plus, now the issue on the non-tariff barrier, I would say that part of that would push the country to promote more innovation in the sense that they need to make sure that their regulation now is robust enough or comply with the international standard enough to be able to trade with other countries. And that's also one thing. So to me, I see that right now we are moving. If I look into the countries in the Mekong-U.S. partnership, I believe that because of the program like this, like MUSP, and also the way that other private sector gather together and put all the comments and recommendations to the government, that I see a good trend that in the last 5 years, I see that the trust is built between these countries and also the private sector, that also really help to facilitate faster development of the regulatory reforms to sustain the seed industry. If I can share in a nutshell of how we evolve in the sense of the regulatory reforms for the seed sector.
Great, thank you. Thank you. This one is from our audience, and it's posed to all of you or any of you. And it's on the topic of public-private partnerships and public-private relationships, which is a theme these days that we see often pronounced within the Mekong region and ASEAN, and more so from the United States and the US government. So how do any of you see public-private partnerships develop? Where does the initiative come from? Who takes the first steps? And what are the specific or most appropriate areas to develop public-private partnerships? I saw David turn his camera on. Perhaps David has a comment here.
Just briefly, Brian, thank you very much. Yes, and we're big supporters of public-private partnerships. I would leave it to my esteemed panelists to look at specific opportunities within the MUSP region in the field of agriculture and seed in particular. In my 20 plus years in the State Department, I've seen very successful public-private partnerships. It's really a two-way street where you need to make sure that there are benefits for all sides, and that you have good companies in a variety of countries joining together with willing government partners to work on these projects. Sometimes it's difficult to find, but we're big supporters and think that that's really a great avenue for future cooperation. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. Others?
Yeah, Brian.
Go ahead, Swan. Go ahead, Swan.
Oh, fine. Okay. Thank you, Fang. Hi. I think if the question is who should take the first step, I believe it's a matter of communication. So I'm quite happy to see that recently if we looking into the ASEAN region, many ASEAN countries are now pretty open to the discussions with the privates. I give you one example, the recent structural changes within the Vietnamese government. So we have been seeing several communication around the regulatory revision and improvement, and private is part of the discussions. So I think if the communication between two parties are improving, then it's just a matter of who can identify the future direction, which is most of the case the private. So the privates tend to have early detections or early awareness about, let's say, the new technology or the new way of doing things. And often the regulation comes somewhat late. And this is understandable. But if you want to make it even better, then the two needs to work together on how the policy is future-proofed, meaning that it can accommodate the future changes, the future developments in relation to, let's say, certain technology. This time, we might be very happy with the drone and how we can operate drone to maximize not only the input applications, but also on surveillance and monitoring the whole planting period. But in the future, we might also see how the drones can play even more important roles, let's say, in deciding and supporting the monitoring and verification for the carbon trading in agriculture, for example. So that kind of changes would require a changes at the regulatory level as well. And when the communications are fluid between private and the public, then adjusting to the recent development, evolution of the technology will be much, much easier. And I'm happy to see that is quite promising in the region. And hopefully that stays the same and even more so in the future.
Thanks, Swandi. Hi, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just very briefly from our perspective here in DC, but working on behalf of the U.S. private sector and our member companies, May mentioned earlier, building trust is important, communication is important, as Swani mentioned. We're always looking for opportunities for more public-private dialogue, for more opportunities to collaborate, whether that's in the region. Capacity building opportunities, or whether it's in the U.S. As delegations come over and we try to create more dialogue, or whether it's for technical assistance and regulators coming to the U.S. to understand more about some of the processes. I think all of those is important, and as we do more of them, we build more and more trust. I think a lot of the collaboration that we look at, we try to tackle some of the regulatory issues and overall to help get the processes, get the standards, and then as well as get the innovative products and technology into market to support farmers there. So just briefly there, but a few importances. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a question, Dr. May, and then we'll come back to Dave.
I would like to chime in another things that is a collaboration between national level and also regional forum is very helpful. That in the way that if the communication is sent at the streamline the communication also from the private sector, what is our ask, and so what is the gap also from the national level, and that's why a forum like MUSP is helpful, because they can see that, oh, wow, this is how for example, Vietnam is doing this. How can we do the same, and how can we exchange the practice? So somehow that kind of forum also generate public relationship, and that's also the same help to improve in the sense that the policy and also regulatory reforms at the national level.
Thank you. And David.
Thanks, Brian. Just I should make a shameless plug for my colleagues in the Foreign Commercial Service as well as the Foreign Agricultural Service, who and the Department of Commerce and USDA here in Washington. They are really some of their core mission is to look at and see how they can make these connections between public and private entities, as well as our economic sections under the Department of State. Both here in Washington, but overseas. So they are really, a great node, a great connective tissue for this topic. Over.
Thank you. There's a question about food sovereignty, and this one really strikes at the heart of the Mekong, but ASEAN as well, given that the foods and the cuisines that are served in the homes of the people of Southeast Asia, as well as in the restaurants, are also unique and robust and amazingly delicious. How are industries, we've spoken a lot about the large industries, but we've also touched a bit on SMEs. But how are industries embracing the need for food sovereignty and interacting with those in this really important part of the world where food sovereignty and cuisine seeks to be preserved? Thoughts? Or
If I
perhaps, go ahead, May. Thank you.
maybe not directly, but of course any efforts that the seed sector provide right now, like beyond the seed producers itself, there are also, I just need to share again, the way seed sector work is they work with two types of farmers. One is the seed producers, and another type is the fresh produce farmers. And so the fresh produce farmers, this is also very important that they need to have a good knowledge on how they adjust themselves, or even which crops. We talk about salinity also, in Mekong-U.S. Partnership in the workshop, and that's also important that we work together with the institution to make sure that we share good practices on how which crop should be put on the ground, what is the agronomic practices to make sure that also we be mindful about the sustainability aspect, like sustainable agriculture practices, and that would also generate not only food security but also food safety for the consumers. I know that it is quite challenging right now. Talking is easier than executing right now, right? Because somehow that about the technology adoption also is not easy everywhere. Which still I believe that still the government and the private sector still work together on the program to make sure that the farmers can access to the technology to help them produce food sustainably.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this is one issue that will become more and more prominent over the next decade, and one that both industry, farmers, and local consumers will need to embrace in order to preserve the unique identities of parts of the Mekong, because food is extremely important for being a part of the culture of the numerous peoples of the Mekong, but also of the diet, the robust diets that people take part in. I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Hai Pham to provide some closing remarks. We're going to end a bit early since one of our panelists couldn't join us today. But that gives you more time to read through our excellent report and think about ways that these recommendations can be put to use for good. But I did see Swendi turned his mic on. Swendi, did you have any final comments?
Yeah, I
Okay,
just
thank
want
you.
to add a little bit on the food security topics, Brian, particularly in Mekong Delta region. So if we look back on the recent conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, for example, the Mekong region itself are very well connected on the paper and also underground, meaning that there are many connections that we perhaps are not really able to tell directly in terms of the border trades and exchange knowledge informations. So the conflict itself, based on my colleagues' observation, has also impacting not only Cambodian migrant workers, families living in the border area, but also the farmers and the consumers from both sides. So, and if you look at from how most of the workers are within the agricultural sectors, both in Thai border and also the Cambodian border, we see the impacts are way beyond just not being able to secure and fulfill the food, but also to sustain their overall economic incomes. So in that sense, if we talk about the food security, we cannot detach this particular topic with the stability, political stability, economic and social stability, but also on how the countries within the regions need to work together, because whether they like it or not, they are well connected beyond just like a political relationship. So I think this should be more prominent, and even more so when the region itself are getting closer to ensure that they can cope with the uncertainty at the global level.
Thank you for those. I will count these as your closing remarks and reminding us that the Thai-Cambodia border conflict is playing out, and it's had a very sharp downward effect on trade between the two countries, and those trade effects also resonate throughout the region. So here's hoping that that conflict can be resolved soon, and farmers and traders can get back to business. Thank you again, Swandi. So over to you, Hai, for some closing remarks, and thank you again for serving as my fellow co-chair at our 10th Track 1.5 Policy Dialogue.
Thanks so much, Brian. And everyone else, thank you. On behalf of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council and our members, we're really grateful for the opportunity to collaborate on this important project. Also an important opportunity to invite some of our member companies and the private sector voice to the room to share their perspectives in this discussion. And we know the order was a little bit different, but our USABC collaborated with the Stimson Center on the subsequent iteration of this policy dialogue on digital economy as well. So, and I hope that one went well. Food and agriculture in the Mekong region is an important topic, and one that I believe the previous year's dialogue in 2024 also touched on fisheries and agriculture and food security. And so we're happy to help to include the dimension of the private sector voices and contributions to this year's. A lot of the topics and policy recommendations from this year's dialogue really closely aligned with the USABC's work in the food and ag sector, some that I mentioned earlier, but really highlighting the recommendations to adopt international best practices and standards. That's something that we've promoted for many years now. Touching on the non-tariff barriers to trade, that's the essence of USABC's work, and working with government agencies to continue to improve the regulatory processes. Industry often faced a lot of barriers, like unclear guidelines, long approval times to get a lot of products to market, and a lot of other regulatory hurdles. And so to be able to sort of work and contribute to some of these processes is very important to us. As I was at the conference and observing some of the other panels, a lot of the topics and recommendations that USABC we don't touch on too much. But it was super, interesting for me to hear even topics like, I remember one of the panels on how to get the younger population to be excited about working in agriculture. I thought that was very enlightening, and a lot of the recommendations there make a lot of sense as well. And so overall, to close, we're really pleased to be able to participate in this year's dialogue, to include the perspectives from the US, from some speakers from the Mekong region, and all across ASEAN. And to be able to contribute. So we're happy about that, and looking forward to any future collaborations. And of course, would love the opportunity to support with any of the implementation and follow-ups as well. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Hai. Our partnership with the U.S. ASEAN Business Council was bar none, and we look forward to doing that again. And as you mentioned, we also partnered on our 11th policy dialogue, focusing on the digital economy. That report launch already happened last week, we're kind of moving back in time and doing our 10th report launch today. But just to recap, we've held the Stimson Center in partnership with IUCN, with local partners on the ground, such as the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, the Cambodian Institute for Cooperation and Peace, and many other partners, as well as the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, really found this a labor of love to host the 11 conferences over the last 5 years and to convene the thought leaders, the community members, the private sector leaders, and government officials that are in the mix of some of these very important themes that are present in the region. And those themes, just to recap, and I can't name all 11, but we looked at connectivity, we looked at energy and infrastructure, we looked at nature-based solutions, we looked at transboundary water governance. We had 2 conferences on cybercrime and cyber scams, and we're grateful to the State Department for providing the energy to focus on issues like cyber scams and scam compounds. Our last 2, again, were on food and agriculture, investment and trade, and then the final was on digital economy. And I think we really ran the gamut of pressing issues, and there are likely more pressing themes and challenging themes that the Mekong-U.S. partnership can and should engage. So importantly, if you took part in any of these conferences, or if you found these summary reports useful for your own work, please reach out to your contacts at U.S. embassies or the State Department or other U.S. government agencies and let them know how useful this exercise was. Because I think we take a unique approach on convening these dialogues to bring together, again, top-level thought leaders, community-level leaders, and others to engage in this participatory bottom-up process of identifying challenges and developing solutions. I hope that our friends within the U.S. government and other development partners and governments in the region can take a deep look at these summary reports, particularly the one that we launched today, and use those solutions for good, for identifying new investments, new projects, and new interventions to help solve some of the region's most pressing problems. So for now, again, hats off to the U.S. Department of State for sponsoring this 5-year grant. We are officially concluding it tomorrow, and it's been a real honor to serve and to engage with all of you on this very important project. Take care, everyone. Thank you.